Welcome to Caseback Watches. My name is Tim, and in this episode I'm going to review the Yema Granvelle CMM.20, and to tell you the truth, I'm slightly underwhelmed. Don't get me wrong, I really like the brand Yema because they produced in the past very interesting watches with special aspects. And same thing here, I saw the Granvelle, I saw images, saw the spec sheet and thought this is something special because of the TV format, which adds enormous presence to your wrist. So these watches normally really pop. Then the dial construction, the dial layout, and of course the movement, because here we have a Micro-Rotor. The Micro-Rotor, you know, from your old, let's say, Universal Genève pole router, for example, from the 60s, allows a very slender build, interesting to look at, and nowadays fairly robust and hassle-free. But then handling the watch over days, I felt that there's something missing, the last sparkle really. This is not 100%, this is perhaps 90%, because I felt that the dial didn't pop in the way I expected. It is a bit bland. There are three colors available. I have the gray one, and I was a bit underwhelmed by the dial in comparison to the case, which is awesome. It's just great because of the flat build, because of some other elements you will see in detail, of course. And whilst handling the movement, I felt and heard that this also is not, in my opinion, 100% spot on. And we have to see that this watch goes for roughly 2,000 euros, depending on your location, even more. And for 2,000 euros, you have to deliver something extraordinary. And my feeling is, in this case, this is not really extraordinary. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad watch. And I'm absolutely sure that this watch will find its fans. But I think part of the deal here is, as an independent channel, I will tell you when Yema does something great, and they did a lot of times in the past, right? And when Yema does something which I find a bit inferior, I will tell you as well. This is the simple deal here on the channel. And so in my review, I will tell you all the good sides of the watch, all the good aspects which are present, of course, and I will tell you these weak spots I found. But before we go into the lightbox, allow me a little shout out to Hobby of Hours, which is a YouTube channel about watches. Hobby of Hours, the hour, the minute, the second, so not we, okay? Hobby of Hours. And the host is D, and I was in contact with him several times because his favorite color is green, and he ordered some custom-made items from my shop in Racing Green. I think I made 2 straps for him, a wallet, book cover, and believe it or not, even a custom-made courier bag in green, in Racing Green. Was a hell of a project. I had my fun, and this was one of the rare moments when my wife entered the workshop and she saw this bag ready and said, wow, which is very rare from my wife in these circumstances. And so yeah, it was a pleasure, D. Thank you very much for supporting this channel. And D showed my work on his channel, Hobby of Hours. So I think this is a really good tip. Check him out, Hobby of Hours here on YouTube. He has an interesting collection, and he's not afraid to make a statement with wrist shots and with watches and straps and colors. And now let's go into the light box. Now let's check out that Yema. Okay, and here we are with the Yema Granvelle CMM.20. Measurements first, because we have a unusual format here, so I think it's interesting to hear these numbers. So the case diameter here is 39 millimeters, the length, the lug to lug, 47, height is 8.6, so we have a relatively slender watch, or I should say very slender watch actually. We have a lug width here of 20. And a sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating. Then the website states that we have a screw-down crown. Oopsie, I think it's a little mistake. This is a regular crown, and the water resistance is 50 meters. Inside, this is the CMM.20 Micro-Rotor movement, and the watch comes on this attractive strap here with this advanced clasp, deployment buckle. And the price for the ensemble is 1,990 euros, including VAT, so minus VAT converted into US dollars. I think you are around 1,700 US dollars. Okay, and now let's jump into detail and let's examine the dial first, because here we have quite some interesting features to explore. First, we have a vinyl type of structure, and the center of that structure is this little subdial, which I find very interesting. Normally, these vinyl structures go around the center of the watch, so the main hands here. But here, the little second is the center of the dial, which I find very interesting. Then we have a minute track and the sub dial, and everything follows this TV-ish format of the dial. Very interesting and fairly legible, because with Dauphin hands without lume, you always have the problem when the thing is completely out of the light, like this. For example, I had it there. Then it's not super legible. But this is not a fault of Yema. This problem you have with every high polished Dauphin hands, that a certain angle is not perfect to read the time. In daily life, it's not so much of a problem, but of course in this artificial light circumstances here, you can spot it very well. And the little word here is the Micro-Rotor, and here Manufacture Française is very, very small. I don't know if you can read that. And interesting is, of course, also that you have this tone together with this whiter outer dial and with these interesting indices. So we have sort of an arrow type indices, high polished, and with a nice connection to the form of the Dauphin hands. And so very interesting to look at. Certainly a matter of taste, and I can absolutely imagine people who do not like this look, but I find it at least special, I must say. And special is also the case. There you go, you have sort of a coin edge side here. You have relatively short lugs, which is good. I think it would look odd when this watch came with very, very long lugs, and so all fine. Here you have the caliber, and it's a very handsome thing, I must say. Not the rotor. The rotor I don't find especially handsome, to be honest, but the entire layout and of course these stripes here also align towards the Micro-Rotor. And this rotor, by the way, is Wolfram. This is a very, very heavy metal, and I think this is the idea when you have something small, but it's the only source of energy, so to speak. It must be heavy to be in a proper rotation. And this works fine here. And we've seen, of course, this Micro-Rotor on Universal Genève watches, Pole Rotor, for example, from the 60s. But the specs here are pretty modern. So we have a modern beat rate of 28,800 and a power reserve of 70 hours, so quite some days. And one benefit of this Micro-Rotor system or design is that it keeps the watch flat, because you don't have a rotor on top of the actual movement. And a good strap, I must say. I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to strap because I'm close to the source, but this is a really, really nice product. There you go, Manufacture Française, Yema, and of course this buckle here, which I don't like. I don't like actually. I will explain to you in a second when we put this watch on the wrist, then you will see why I'm not the biggest fan of this type of buckles. And of course this watch goes with a variety of straps. You can imagine it on black, for example, Caseback number 3. So high-end black strap, which adds a bit of elegance, or take a Cordovan strap, also Caseback watches with, adds a bit more depth due to the structure and the shine of Cordovan. See the difference? I know this is a bit of advertising, but I think you can see why I find it justified. You can just change the entire watch with a strap. And so all perfect now? No, I don't think so. I really like the case, and I really like the finishing quality of the case. This looks gorgeous. I have the feeling that the finishing quality, or let's say the contrast of the dial is a bit inferior. If you compare the quality of the case with the quality of the dial when it comes to contrast, when it comes to defined forms, then I think it's a bit weaker. And the caliber itself shows a good performance and is handsome, but it's a bit rattly. Sounds a bit like a, let's say, affordable Miyota. Some of them have very noisy rotors. And this, I don't know. Can you hear this? It's a bit noisy, and I find this distracting. And I know from old pole rotors that at least the watches I handled, they were very quiet, and so I think this is a bit of a minus. And by the way, I'm in the last hole of the strap with a 17 centimeter wrist, which I also find not great. And there you go, 17 centimeter wrist, 39 millimeter watch. And this is of course very nice. That's slender, very comfortable, should sit very comfortable on the wrist despite the size of the watch. And you may note that 39 millimeters in this format, in this square form here, wears a smidgen bigger. I would say it wears more like 40 to 41 millimeters. And what I don't like with the clasp is that you are constant contact with metal and not always comfortable. It feels a bit odd. I mean, I think I could get used to it, but I really prefer the cheap, good old clasp here, despite that thing. But I know for a fact that people often have another opinion. They actually find this very luxurious and very nice on the wrist, and so take this as my personal taste, please. Alright, welcome back. I hope you had some interesting insights, and I hope you can make an informed decision now about the watch. And many thanks to Yema, because there are some companies out there that allow only 100% positive coverage, and Yema is not amongst them. They just send you a watch and then you can say whatever you want. And this is a sign of strength and the sign of trust, and I really appreciate this form of collaboration. And so many thanks again to Yema and the team. Alright, and that's all about the watch. Please don't forget to visit CasebackWatches.com, where you can purchase luxury leather straps and other leather items I produce with my own hands here in Hamburg, Germany. It was a pleasure to see you there as a customer and as a supporter of the channel. And that's all for this episode. Thank you very much for your attention, and until next time.